Good morning. And it is not every day you get to meet a big hedge fund manager, especially announcing a huge trade. Stay tuned. Well, welcome to NoteSchool TV, and thank you for being with us today. We go live every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time, and we are super excited about the show today, as I teased you a bit there in the beginning. So let's go over a couple of things here. We want to make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you hit that bell notification so that you will know when we go live every Wednesday, right? At 11:05 Central Time. So if you will, also say hello in the chat there and let us know where you're from and ask your questions, right? Because we will go after the show into our after party. And in the after party, we will go over all of your questions, and we'll just be able to spend some relaxed time with our guest today. Also, if you want to know more about NoteSchool, certainly go to noteschool.com/live TV, and we will be happy to get you more information and show you what NoteSchool is really all about. So again, thanks for being here today. And again, remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. Now, we're going to go to this week's news. We always promise to keep you guys up to speed. Get it? Up to speed. Pardon the pun there, right? On the latest things happening in the note and the real estate business. So, yesterday, the CDC issued a new eviction plan, right? Or ban, which is effective now through October 3rd. Center for Disease Control issued a new eviction ban across most of the country until October. The former moratorium expired last month, even as some 11 million Americans continue to be past due on their rent. So, guys, stay tuned on that. We will see what happens as this plays out over the next little while. And in a little fun piece of the news today, purchases of luxury homes, guys, surges 88.2%, guys, year over year, right? That is the biggest, right, increase of any part of that. So a luxury home sale, as you look in this column right here, median sales price, 1.25 million. Median sales price year over year change. Look at that, 25.8%. Homes sold year over year, 88.2% year over year surge. Average days on the market is 30 days, which is down 34 days year over year. Guys, so the most expensive homes have gone up, and as well, and then you've got the other two here. So, guys, that is the news today as we see it. A lot of stuff continues to go on in the marketplace, and hey, we promise to bring that to you every week. So now I want to bring on our chief visionary, my friend, Mr. W. Eddie Speed.
Hello, Joe.
Good morning, Eddie. How are you, dude? I am so excited about our guest today, man.
Our guest is a long friend of ours and has really a great story, and I'm really excited to tell about it. It's this is a market that I met him in the last cycle, in the 2008 cycle, and we'll talk a lot about how he sort of progressed in the business. And I tell you one thing, Joe. He's got some big news about a significant trade. Significant is in 8 digits that they've just made, and of non-performing notes. So people say, is it here? Is it happening? What do these loans look like? How does it matter? So we're going to talk. We're going to really bring him in and talk about that. But we'll have a great time getting this whole story. So Joe, oh, by the way,
yes,
one thing before we move on with our guest, the CDC thing yesterday is kind of interesting because it kind of conflicts.
Yes, it does.
With the Supreme Court ruling. So we'll see how that shakes out.
And Eddie, I just have to say, Chaz, hey, Chaz, he told me about this big trade last Wednesday, and I have been about to bust a gut to tell this to somebody, but he made me promise that I would not do that. So there you go.
So we're sort of unveiling it today, right? Chaz Guinn, how are you, sir?
Eddie, always good to see you, my friend, and actually glad to be your new neighbor.
You are. And you really are kind of our neighbor. You have even moved over. You moved into Dallas-Fort Worth, but not only that, in our side of town.
I'll tell you, a lot of stuff started to really show itself in my home state of California. Love California, got a family, born and raised there. But for many of you listening, 1 + 1 started to equal 3. And that continually was pushed on a lot of us, and we wanted to kind of look for a different quality of life and be more in the middle of our country and get better access to Wall Street and investors and you and good friends of ours in the business.
That's great. Well, we're glad to have you. Welcome to Texas, you and your beautiful family. We are so excited to have you guys. We were talking before. Chaz has quite an interesting background. Some people don't know this, is that Chaz played a little college football, right?
I'm sure I could just show you little screens up there, couple little comments.
Yeah.
I owe a lot of discipline and grit and leadership from being a part of a group that it's not all about yourself. It's about you dominate the role that you're in, and collectively the group can come together. And I believe that's where you really start to separate yourself from the pack. I didn't grow up riding dirt bikes or playing tennis or golf, even though I love those sports. But I grew up in a team atmosphere. And so I will tell you, college football allowed me to actually forge the businessman, the father, the guy that I am today. So I owe a lot to the football sport.
And you played it in Montana?
Montana State. We're starting to scale. If anybody is familiar with Bozeman.
Is that the Grizzlies?
That's our arch rival, my friend.
Yes, I know some people that are such Montana State fans that they gave me a tie 20 years ago that was a Grizzly tie, and I'm not making that up. I've never told you that.
I don't know if you know this, but the Montana and Montana State rivalry goes back 115 plus years. It's the top 5 oldest rivalry in college football.
That's great.
With no pro sports in the state of Montana, you guys can imagine college football is pretty big.
That's great. You got to play in the NFL a little bit?
I know we've heard this joke, but NFL for me stood for not for long, right? But it allowed me to get a taste of what a 6'6", 250-pound human can run 23, 24 miles an hour, and you're like, whoa, different level of eliteness.
Are you telling me you've been freight trained?
Oh, quickly. In college football, you think you got a little bit more time. The NFL is, whoa, a different speed.
That's great. Well, I know that that definitely formed your view of teamwork, and I would say that is, if I define you, and I could say leader, visionary, I could say, like a market maker, a lot of great words, but I would say a team player would probably be number one. That's a great thing to say, right?
And, I wrote that down, what you said, because I love that. Dominate the role you're in. I love that, man.
That's great. So I met Chaz I don't know. When you meet these friends, you don't necessarily write down what year you met them necessarily. So I know you entered the industry in 2008. You were originally at Condor. And I don't know what year I met you, but let's say fairly soon after that, you and I met, and we have been industry friends. And I'm very proud of your success. You have progressed forward. You are now the president of Revolve Capital. And you guys, you have been involved in transactions that have closed over $1 billion in non-performing notes. Pretty crazy number, Chaz.
I mean, we've recently gone back and looked at our track record. We had to put together kind of Excel sheets, and we've had to start and say from 2008, and we started progressing, and then really started to hit speed in 2010 and beyond. And you look at it and you're going, Eddie, how? And like you mentioned, I really appreciate that comment. It's about team. I didn't do this by myself. Collectively, I was able to find a niche, and I was able to exploit that niche. And I realized there was a gentleman in Texas named Eddie Speed that had created a business of teaching seller finance and teaching the Main Street investor how to get into the space. And I was working at a firm that was taking down Wall Street institutional grade product, and there was no door that allowed you to get into the space. And so you're right. We didn't know where this friendship and this track record between ourselves was going to go. But here we are 13 something years later. And we as a business today, Revolve Capital, I know we'll get into it, but we're able to really partner with yourself and this entire team, from Joe to Bob to yourself, from Charles, from Susan. Everybody is allowing us to really scale our desk, because we want the folks that have never heard of a note, didn't know that you could buy a delinquent mortgage for 50 cents on the dollar or cheaper, and be able to get yourself into an investment that the auction guys, the REO, the fix and flip guys are paying premiums for that product, as you all know. And this is a way for you to kind of come in the back door and still buy that same single family home for a price you would have never been able to know about unless you knew a gentleman like Joe and Eddie that are bringing this vamp to the front street. So as you can tell, I still stay fired up about this business.
Chaz, Joe helps line up our guest. We have some structure to this, and thank you for Joe, and thank you for helping us stay organized. And we have a guest that is going to be one of our guests going forward about non-performing notes, and he's a guy that you actually helped get started. He was a NoteSchool student. He learned the process from us, Justin Wagner, and I remember he bought his first 4 notes with another investor's money for a total of $25,000. Mm-hmm. And today that guy owns 400 notes or properties free and clear and no debt. True story.
Yep.
And he started that process in, I believe, about 2011. Mm-hmm. And so I could tell you story after story after story of students that, Chaz, your company selling them notes was a start. NoteSchool got to help them with the process. NoteSchool got to help them with the guidance and how to do it. But you and I partnered for years where you guys would show your notes to our students where they could buy one-off notes. And we're still doing that today in 2021. We're very excited about your new inventory, by the way. Yes. People should not, let's just say this, maybe, Chaz, we should not be worried about you running out of inventory for a little bit.
So that's a great lead in to what we know is coming. We all know that there's an inevitable wall of assets set to hit the market. I think we all can see across California up to Washington down to Florida, the inventory today is less than 2 months of inventory on the market. Where I just came from in Southern California, there was 1.8 months of inventory on the market. That is why everything is going above asking. Multiple competitive offers per property. And we know that there was 5.5 million mortgages. So if you just times that by average house price of 150, 200,000, you're sitting on billions of mortgages and home value that was not paying on their mortgage pre-COVID. And you want to maybe say, well, then how far delinquent were they pre-COVID? 24 months at a minimum, they were delinquent pre-COVID.
And let me make sure that we break this down, Chaz. So there's cumulatively about 5.5 million mortgages that are currently not paying, most of which became not paying in the virus, correct?
And then the institutions like to call that legacy product.
But the legacy product are loans that were delinquent. You're saying an average of 24 months before the virus started.
Correct.
And that's the waterfall of loans that are now dropping that you're buying that are not subject to the, hey, you can't foreclose factor, the moratoriums and stuff like that, right? In fact, these are assets that are already posted for foreclosure, right?
I wrote down some statistics. You're absolutely right. So just to give you kind of a sense, is 60% of the portfolio that we just took down, we just acquired a $29.3 million portfolio. It will be a press release. You guys are hearing this first. So cheers to really growing this partnership together. I did write down some statistics for you guys. 60% of the portfolio, next due payment, March 1st of 2017.
60%.
So that is well before March of 2020. 3 years. That's 36 months minimum.
So Chaz, I wanted to make sure I'm saying this correct, because I think this whole global picture of these loans, like our audience may not get to hear this clearly very often. So I'm going to just I'm sort of rounding here, Chaz, and unless I say something that's way off, correct me, okay? There were about 500,000 loans that were delinquent before the virus started, right? That are still unresolved.
Yes.
That's the inventory. These are legacy loans. They're loans that were delinquent before the virus started. And I did not know this stat until you just gave it to us. Thank you. They were literally 2 years delinquent before the virus started.
Right.
And so now these loans that are not protected by the same provisions as some of the other loans that have been in forbearance and so forth and so on, they've not been protected by all that. They're now progressing. You've been buying these assets, a giant portfolio, over 29 million. You just closed on. And by the way, we're thrilled because we're going to get to see a lot of these notes on Notes Direct. Not all 29 million, but a good pile. And so what you're describing to us is, yes, there are future loans to come. Let's call it millions. But right now, 500,000 loans, Chaz, that's a monster. 500,000 loans.
No, I have to just make sure everyone realizes Black Knight, a very well-known due diligence company. Eddie, we need to put another 5 in front of your 500,000. So it's 5.5 million loans delinquent pre-COVID. 5.5 million.
And Black Knight just did a report and talked about that.
Black Knight has put out statistics that are showing that an average home value of 175, there's 5.5 million of those spreading from Rhode Island to San Diego that were a minimum of 24 months delinquent pre-March of 2020. Not 500,000, 5.5 million.
So what you're telling me is, Chaz, we thought the market was great before the virus, but there was still this giant shadow inventory.
Giant, where we're estimating at least 30 to 35 billion worth of product that the institutions are deeming legacy. So from us, I mean, many of you that are in different industries that are listening know how big of a market cap that is, that we all could participate in terms of homes that are going to, let's just talk about just a fraction of that amount actually coming through the auction period and getting through foreclosure. You're talking about at least anywhere from 2 to 4 million of those houses setting to hit the street. Okay, so let's just say, because my math, I don't want to jumble it up here, because we do look at both pre-COVID amounts and post-COVID amounts. So I just want to make sure that the audience realizes today's NPL market is sitting at over 10 million delinquent loans. You had a $5 million span of assets pre-COVID, and you've got now million of assets that are now delinquent post-COVID that have lost, not only are they been furloughed, but the job has been permanently gone. Your restaurant worker, your Disneyland worker, your airline worker, the list goes on and on. And so from us, when we look at the jobs market at the height of March of 2020, and you're still seeing that the jobs market is millions below where it was then. And me and you were just talking about before we hopped on that the average 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Orange County is sitting at $800,000. And you're fresh millennial or you're fresh first-time home buyer who's affording that $4,500 mortgage payment.
Right.
Come on. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that the landscape is very clear here, that today, with at least 2 months worth of inventory on the market, what we're all predicting is that even if you had 20% of the backlog legacy assets hit the market, you're going to take the 2 months of inventory and push it to about 6 months worth of inventory. I think many agents and brokers know about a normal market's around 6 months.
6 months. Mm-hmm.
But what happens when that market potentially gets to 9 to 12 months worth of inventory? Are you still selling your $1 million house competitively against your neighbor for $1 million? Or are you going to have to start potentially reducing that price so that you can still stay relevant when you need to sell? Things we all kind of take a gander at when we're kind of looking at really what's happening underneath the shadow.
Well, and once again, the art of this is knowing what the market statistics are so that you are prepared for a market opportunity. Right. And because really Wall Street, the hedge funds got into the distressed asset business after 2008 at a level they'd never been in before. Then the Black Knights and the CoreLogics and all the data sources started producing information that had not been available in our industry. I've been doing it a really long time, right? So back then we didn't know all this data, but this is all what you're describing, Chaz, is what the industry calls shadow inventory, right? And what you're now describing is there's this big group of loans that are getting moved off the conveyor belt, delinquent notes that are getting moved off the conveyor belts, and firms like yours are buying these packages. And we have, Chaz, every time you and I've dealt in buying non-performing notes in the past 15 years at least, we were dealing in a declining real estate market at the point we were buying a non-performing note. This time, it's very odd. We're buying a loan that isn't paying in a on-fire real estate market. Different.
Check this out. So, and everybody today, I've literally have met this argument, especially over the last 18 months. And this is a conversation we can have at any restaurant when we get to meet each other, especially here at Note Expo. A lot of people are arguing today that the climate is far different than it was in 08. I agree. Today, people are sitting in an equitable position. Their house is worth $500,000. They owe $300,000. Okay. But what happens when you haven't been making that $300,000 payment for the last 3 and 4 years? Because your mortgage has been traded and sold off between multiple institutions on the street. And then as your mortgage was getting traded between multiple different hands like a stock, that's what happens with your mortgage security. The minute your mortgage is originated, it starts to bounce around. Then you go into COVID. Now the loan can't progress forward as it was normally going to through the foreclosure process of lack of payment. And it gets stalled over the last 18 months, additional to the amount of years you were not paying prior to then. So here's what we're seeing is this phantom equity. Sure, your house is worth and could appraise for $500,000. Sure, it shows you owe $300,000. But honey, you haven't been making 4 and 5 years worth of payments with interest, with fees. with foreclosure advances, insurance advances done by the lender on your behalf.
Right.
It's all to argue that everybody listening on this call is going to be able to acquire product, delinquent homes for cents on the dollar for the next 2 to 3 years, because we have barely made a crack and a dent into the legacy assets. And we have yet to even talk about what happens with the COVID inventory that will set to hit the street in the next few years as well.
And
so
if you're brand new in the business, you can't relate to this. If you're old seasoned like we all are, you know this. The quality of the collateral, the value of the collateral is excessively different than a lot of the non-performing notes, Chaz, that we saw come through in the last cycle of the post 2008 cycle.
I mean, when you saw the movie The Big Short, if you have not seen that movie, what a great depiction of the latest subprime market. When you were seeing multiple properties that had just blight, Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, where you had boarded up neighborhoods throughout. Eddie, we did a look back, sir. 08 to 2012, average home value that you and I were moving, $47,000.
Average home value.
Home value, 2-bed, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,250 square feet, quarter-acre lot, front yard and a backyard, right? This is the values, just like Eddie was talking about earlier. No one wanted to catch the falling knife.
Yeah,
the values were plummeting between a 2008 to 2012-13 period.
Chaz, I started buying non-performing notes in 1986. I lived in Texas. The market fell apart. The savings and loans and the banks were going broke. Later formed the old RTC. So I've been around this game a while, right? I told a close friend of mine in the last couple of days that the inventory of non-performing notes is the best grade of inventory I've ever seen in 40 years in this business. The cycle you're talking about right now is the best product I've ever had a swing at in my career.
Right.
I'll just throw this out there. Everybody can welcome to check this out. 303 Whitmore Lane in Lake Forest, Illinois. 303 Whitmore Lane, Lake Forest, Illinois. We bought this non-performing note in April 2021. And we bought the note assuming we'd have to get a hold of the homeowner and negotiate something, because we saw that the foreclosure process was deep. I mean, we're talking 10-yard line. All you need to do, Eddie, is punch it in, right? Yeah. And in our world, for those that are newer into the space, when the judgment has been entered and it's been filed with the courts, that legally can be verified, then an auction date with the sheriff will be held, and that's a public information. So this asset had an auction date assigned to it.
Right.
So long story short is we bought our interest, we bought the note, and by the way, on 303 Whitmore for a hefty discount up against the value that you're going to see. And what we noticed was the house was vacant. The homeowners from Illinois moved and vacated to Jacksonville, Florida. They signed a cash for keys deed in lieu. They avoided their credit being ruined for the next 7 years. We're rehabbing this house. We're going to be done in 2 weeks. Just to tell you, we bought it for less than 50 cents on the dollar, and we're going to sell it for 125 cents of the repaired value. And we're not special. We're not special. Everybody can do this.
This is why I said that the inventory of non-performing notes, I believe that the quality of inventory, right? Not cheap, blighted neighborhoods and blighted houses, but good houses in good neighborhoods, but still delinquent notes that you're buying at a discount. This market cycle, I'm excited because this is the best product I've ever seen. And Chaz, we're grateful to you because you take and list those assets on Notes Direct. And by the way, guess what time it is, Joe?
I was just going to jump in there. It is time to thank our sponsor being Notes Direct. Now, listen, guys, we're going to jump into the after party here in just a minute. But first, a word from our sponsor, Notes Direct, and Feeding Frenzy Friday. Yes, everyone, we want to thank our sponsor, Notes Direct, and we want to encourage you to check out Feeding Frenzy Friday, where every Friday, Brian Lochner and Scott Tyler go live and talk about an asset, and featuring not only performing assets, but we are featuring non-performing assets as well. So check out Feeding Frenzy Friday, noteschool.com/FFF, right? All right. So guys, thanks so much for being with us today. Again, if you want to know more about Note School, make sure and go to noteschool.com/TV. Check us out. We would love to have you as part of the Note School family. And guys, as we always say, thanks again for being on Note School TV, where every Wednesday at 11:05 we go live. We will see you next week. See you on the other side, and make sure and stick around for our after party. Thanks, and we'll see you next week. Well, guys, good job.
We got excited, didn't we, Joe?
That was fun.
Exciting topic.
So, Chaz, you and I have had so many miles in this space, and seen markets and seen, so somebody that's new entering the market, and I see that we've got some old friends with us today for sure. But
certainly do.
But somebody that's new into this market, it's hard for them to relate, because an average house of $50,000 in 2012 going to the average value of what we're looking at today of a house at, call it 200 grand. It's just such a better property. And by the way, that house of 50 grand, Chaz, they probably couldn't call a realtor and sell it and get out of the deal.
No.
A realtor
Right.
would take the listing, right, Chaz?
Right. Absolutely.
So the chance of buying a delinquent note and it getting paid off or getting bought by a third party at the foreclosure, what do you think those odds are, Chaz?
We have tracked it. I would say that it is increased at least 30 to 40% of our sales at auction. For example, we just acquired a $150,000 house in Syracuse, New York. The homeowners only owed $45,000 on the house, had over $100,000 in equity, bailed, left the home a year ago, pre-COVID, or right as COVID had happened. Right, a lot of people left the state of New York, and so they left the house. It was abandoned. It was boarded up. It was locked, secured. Long story short is, we got inside and they left it pristine. All we needed to do was slap some paint on that thing, a little bit of lipstick, for sale sign, and it's gone. Now, keep in mind, the mortgage balance was $45,000. Value was $150,000. We acquired it for $22,500. So we were thinking to ourselves, please, nobody buy this at the steps. Nobody buy this at the steps. We want this to revert back to us so that we can get in that house and flip it for $200,000 and make a home run on this thing, right? And little do we know, boom, sold at the steps for $45,000, the full payoff of the mortgage. We doubled our money, and we were not happy. Right. Well, first time we've been not happy, not making money. Right.
I was talking to a friend on the phone earlier this morning, Chaz, and he's very seasoned. I mean, like, this guy's literally created 35,000 owner finance notes. And I've known him a long, long time. And some of the lobby efforts that we've done, he's helped us with that. And I was describing to him that what's illogical about the market. So all of these loans that are delinquent, They could call a realtor and list it. It's just like the hobbyist landlord.
Right.
I mean, there's millions of small-time landlords that are managing their own property. They don't have the property professionally managed, and they're not collecting rent. They say the average rent is Chaz. The average rent is over $6,000
behind.
Why wouldn't you just call a realtor and list it? I know that's logical, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, so Joe's wife is a third grade school teacher. And I used an analogy. I said, well, a guy that works with us, Joe, his wife's a third grade school teacher. And I say that she has to understand how a third grader thinks.
That's right.
She doesn't think like a third grader.
Right.
So the point is, it's illogical they wouldn't do it, but we now know how they're thinking. And that is, they're not listing these properties with realtors.
I know. I think I know why. And tell me if you think I'm wrong.
Okay, guys, listen, everybody lean in.
Where are they going to go? So let's just say you rent your house, or let's just say you're in foreclosure. You've been delinquent on your payments. You know it. I know it. It's funny when I talk about this business to a lot of different people, their mind's blown that you can just still be in your house and not make your payment. And you're like, absolutely. Your electric company, your lawn maintenance, your gas, your fire, all that sort of stuff is separate from the mortgage company. So you can wave at your neighbor, hey, Mike, and little does he know that you haven't made your payment in 2 years, right? So let's just get back to the point real quickly is, let's just say you're delinquent on payments 2 years, you're getting the foreclosure notices sent to your door, stapled on, put into the mail, and you say, you know what, honey, let's just stick a for sale sign, pay off the bank, avoid foreclosure. Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
You're either going to force to go into an apartment, which, by the way, we've all seen how competitive the apartment market's been across the country as rents continue to uptick. But we've also seen where is going to be the inventory, because now the inventory is so competitive, you're going to have to overpay just to be able to get yourself into a decent or bigger house than you just sold. It's tough.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm backing into that logic a little bit, Eddie, as to why they wouldn't pull the trigger on capitalizing on the rental income when they know how much demand they can get for their home. And then I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but if they're sitting there on a family of 4 or family of 5, where are they going?
Yeah, I think it's that is definitely the argument that I hear the most often, and it is the most logical to me. So thank you for saying that. And I think the answer is guys, the shadow inventory, not the inventory of houses that are listed with realtors now, but the inventory that is yet to come, what the industry calls that shadow inventory. It's really a crazy number. And this should help you guys know that the non-performing note world, while it was a little stagnant, it was pretty slow, call it from 2016 to 2021. Now, all of a sudden, there is this giant pent-up inventory of non-performing notes. Chaz is describing this huge amount of notes that are like crazy delinquent, way delinquent before the virus ever started. And now all of a sudden, those loans are getting pushed down the pike. And by the way, the one thing that everybody asks about is, Chaz, what's the government going to do? Mm-hmm. What's the belief about this? What are they going to do?
I've got 2 schools of thought. I believe if no matter what political side you're on listening, I believe that if you were any sort of new administration coming into office, you would do your darndest to make sure that the housing market doesn't fall on its face within the first 6 to 12 months of your administration. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's too hard to kind of just understand. That being said, you can only hold up the dam for so long. Yeah. I'm sure everybody knows that we're on here talking about residential assets, but commercial is not far behind. Yeah. We've all seen that, right now I'm in my home. I'm not in a big corporate building we have corporate offices throughout the country at Revolve, but today I'm in a home office, just like many are probably listening here. And that's the new change in this era. So we see the commercial vacancies skyrocketing. We do see the legacy portfolio of the assets coming. So where is the government going to step in? I think the government has to step in on mortgages that have been originated between 2020 and 2021. They have to make sure these newer homeowners cannot be affected by a recent pandemic that has just happened. That's millions. We just heard that Fannie and Freddie just bought back $1 trillion worth of new originated mortgages. So people are taking on new mortgages more than we've ever seen or heard of in our past. So that means that people have been happy, right? People have been buying new homes. We did, my family did, we see others across the country. Where am I going? Is the government really doesn't have a tolerance for you not making your payments since 2016, though.
Right.
They can't because they can't. They no matter what their belief system is, super liberal, super conservative, they can't do it. One last comment I was going to make, Chaz, is so we saw at the highest I can remember, way highest in my career by far, was call it around 2011. There were 12 million delinquent mortgages. So it's somewhere around 2010 or 11. 12 million delinquent mortgages.
Yes.
Most, call it 5 times the number we'd ever seen in the history of America. What you're now describing is 10 million loans are not paying in an on-fire real estate market that people are, let's just call it, kind of oblivious to the inventory that is coming to the market. So if you're listening to this and you're squared away, you understand that a play in non-performing notes right now really is a market condition that a lot of people are unaware of, and there's not, and let's be fair about it, there's not a lot of competition.
That's right.
I didn't get to say this earlier, but I think a lot of people should really understand is that I've been in this space a long time, but I started as an asset manager, just trying to figure out how to do this and what is a foreclosure and bankruptcy and what do the documents all look like and how do they tie together. And I will tell you that if you fast forward from my start to just 2020, is I really grew the company the most we've ever grown in the last 3.5, 4 years in 2020, doing that from the house.
Right.
So we own a national portfolio. We have a servicer, a licensed servicer. We have a licensed national custodian who holds all of my documents. We have vendors that run valuations for me. We have crews that do contracting, fix, and flip work for me. And I do all of this right here and right here. And so I just want to make sure that the audience takes away that I'm not out there putting a hard hat and boots on, even though I'd love to. But I'm not cutting my teeth physically doing this. I'm doing all of this from the comfort of my house, my cell phone, my Bluetooth, my walking around, doing deals, talking to folks like yourself. This is the way that we grow this note business. So I like to think about becoming the bank and doing that from my home while my little 2-year-old and my 9-month-old are running around and getting to see that is pretty special. So I just want to make sure that a lot of you that are thinking about this space and hearing all these big, gigantic numbers, that I think what value add we are bringing to you is the ability to buy a onesie, twosie.
That's it.
And then grow your business to 3 to 5, 7 to 10, 12 to 15. And before you know it, you have your own portfolio, you're raising capital, you're creating a legacy for your family. That's what really gets us fired up to talk about.
Wow.
One last thing, Joe. And I'm not going to explain all the details. I'm going to say that's why you come to NoteSchool.
There you go.
But one thing is this: the knowledge level and the work level to buy non-performing notes is about 40% of what it was in 2015.
Right.
Amen.
It is way easier to enter this market, work-wise, knowledge-wise, than it was in the past. So if you guys are interested, I hope we've at least given you some true advantages to consider. Chaz Guinn, you're awesome, dude.
Yes.
Boys, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. This is fun.
Guys, thank you, Chaz. Thank you. It's a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you in person at Note Expo. And I can't believe the little one's 9 months old. You and I were talking before Note Expo last year, and you guys were just waiting for the birth, right?
Starting to sleep through the night, so the days are a little bit better.
Good for
That's
you.
good.
And guys, just listen, Eddie is going to make sure that NoteSchool and the NoteSchool team, we are going to stay right on top of this market, and we're going to keep you informed on this market. And if you want to learn more about how to enter this market, certainly go to noteschool.com/TV. Check out assets on Notes Direct. And folks, I've loved this show. One of my favorites, right, so far. And we will see you next week. Our guest will be Justin Wagner. You heard Eddie describe Justin a little while ago. And we look forward to seeing you then. Take care, everybody. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
Okay.